It was a calm evening on the North Sea. A wealthy inventor boarded a steamer bound for England, carrying dreams of global expansion, revolutionary technology, and perhaps dangerous secrets. By morning, he was gone. No trace, no explanation, just a hat and coat neatly placed on the deck of the ship. What happened to Rudolf Diesel, the man who changed the world with his invention, only to vanish without a trace? Was it suicide, murder, or something far more sinister? Welcome back to Missing Persons Archives, where we uncover the forgotten disappearances that still leave the world asking questions. If you enjoy unsolved mysteries, historical disappearances, and strange vanishings, make sure to like, subscribe, and tap the bell icon so you never miss a story. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most baffling and overlooked disappearances in history, the strange case of Rudolf Diesel, the inventor of the diesel engine who vanished at sea under suspicious circumstances. This is a story of genius, betrayal, political intrigue, and a body no one ever recovered. Let's get into it. Born on March 18, 1858 in Paris, Rudolf Diesel was a mechanical genius. By his mid-30s, Diesel had invented an engine unlike anything before it. While the world ran on steam and coal, Diesel dreamed of something more efficient, more sustainable, an engine that didn't rely on expensive fossil fuels. In 1897, after years of failure, poverty, and even hospitalization from a near-fatal explosion in his lab, Diesel finally succeeded. He created the diesel engine, a revolutionary technology that could run on peanut oil, vegetable oil, and a variety of cheaper fuels. In a world dominated by coal barons and monopolies, Diesel's invention was disruptive, and it made him both wealthy and some dangerous enemies. By the early 1910s, Diesel was more than just a successful inventor. He was a public advocate for small-scale energy independence. He believed farmers should power their own equipment using the crops they grew, but at the same time, Diesel was in debt. Despite the success of his engine, bad investments, expensive patents, and multiple legal battles drained his finances. And as Europe stood on the brink of World War I, Diesel's technology wasn't just an industrial game changer, it had serious military implications. On September 29, 1913, Rudolf Diesel boarded the SS Dresden, a German passenger steamer bound for Harwich, England from Antwerp, Belgium. His mission, to attend a groundbreaking ceremony for a new diesel engine factory in London. He was also scheduled to meet with British naval officials to discuss powering Royal Navy submarines with diesel engines instead of coal, a major strategic shift, especially with tensions brewing between Britain and Germany. Accounts from that night tell us Diesel was in good spirits. He enjoyed dinner with other passengers and retreated to his cabin around 10 p.m. He asked for a wake-up call at 6:15 a.m. the following morning, but when the steward knocked the next day, there was no response. The door was unlocked. Diesel's bed was neatly made, his pajamas were folded, his watch placed on the bedside table. His hat and overcoat were found on deck near the ship's railings. Rudolf Diesel had vanished. No one had seen him leave his room. There were no reports of splashing, no cries for help. It was as if the man had simply stepped into the night and disappeared. For 10 days, there was no trace of Diesel. Then, on October 10, 1913, a grim discovery surfaced. A Dutch fishing vessel operating in the North Sea found a badly decomposed body floating in the water. The corpse was too decayed for transport, so the crew retrieved only personal effects: a pill case, a pocket knife, a wallet, and keys, all later identified by Diesel's son, Eugen. The fishermen released the body back into the sea. The world never saw Diesel's remains again. For over a century, historians and conspiracy theorists have debated what truly happened to Rudolf Diesel. Here's a breakdown of the major theories. Theory 1, suicide. The official explanation at the time was simple: suicide. Diesel was known to have financial troubles. His personal diary, recovered from his belongings, had a haunting detail: a large X marked on September 29th, the very day of his disappearance. He was reportedly deeply in debt, owed back royalties, and was facing multiple lawsuits over patent rights. Critics say the pressure became too much. But here's where it gets complicated. Diesel had told friends and family about his future plans: visiting England, expanding his factory, working with the British Navy. He had even packed gifts for his wife and made long-term commitments. His son and close associates strongly rejected the suicide theory. Theory 2, accident. Another explanation is tragic but mundane: accidental death. Could Diesel have gone on deck for fresh air, tripped, and fallen overboard in the dead of night? There are some issues with this theory. The sea was calm, and Diesel was known to be careful and methodical. His night clothes were folded, suggesting he deliberately dressed and went on deck, rather than casually stepping out. No witnesses heard or saw anything, and there were no signs of a struggle. Could it have been an accident? Maybe, but many historians remain skeptical. Theory 3, murder and industrial sabotage. Of all the theories surrounding the death of Rudolf Diesel, none is quite as compelling or as sinister as the possibility that he was murdered, not by a lone attacker or some random act of violence, but by the invisible hand of industrial and political powers who viewed him as a threat. To understand this possibility, you have to understand who stood to lose the most if Rudolf Diesel lived. In the early 20th century, Germany was an empire powered by coal. The entire industrial machine of Europe's rising superpower depended on it. Coal fired the ships in German ports, kept the steel furnaces burning in the Ruhr Valley, and powered the locomotives stretching across the continent. But coal wasn't just energy, it was control, and the men who owned those coal fields wielded unimaginable power. In the iron and soot-filled heart of Germany's industrial empire stood names that carried both wealth and influence. August Thyssen, the founder of Thyssen Industries, who had built a financial empire through coal, steel, and iron. Then there was Friedrich Alfred Krupp, head of the Krupp dynasty, whose forges churned out the steel and armaments that filled the German military. Later, the Krupp Empire would fall under the stewardship of Bertha Krupp, the wealthiest woman in Europe. Alongside them was Hugo Stinnes, the so-called king of the Ruhr, whose reach extended across coal, shipping, and heavy industry. These were men who didn't just own factories, they influenced governments. Rudolf Diesel represented a genuine threat to their empire. His engine was efficient. It could run on cheap oil, or worse, vegetable oil, fuel that could be grown by local farmers. His dream of decentralized power, of energy independence, was heresy to men whose wealth was built on controlling the industrial lifeblood of a nation. Every diesel engine built meant fewer coal-fired boilers. Every new patent Diesel filed threatened to erode the monopoly of the coal barons. But Diesel's enemies didn't end there. Across the Atlantic, the shadow of John D. Rockefeller loomed large. Standard Oil had become the most feared and powerful monopoly in America, controlling the flow of oil and its profits. Diesel's engine, with its ability to run on a range of fuels, wasn't just a novelty, it was a danger. In Europe, the Rothschild banking dynasty had invested heavily in the burgeoning oil fields of Baku, seeking to challenge Standard Oil's dominance. Both empires stood to gain from controlling fuel, but both stood to lose if the world no longer needed refined petroleum to run its ships and factories. Diesel had no allegiance to either power bloc, and that made him unpredictable, a wild card in a high-stakes game of industrial warfare. But perhaps the most chilling motive of all lay in the realm of politics. By 1913, Europe was teetering on the brink of war. Germany and Britain were locked in a feverish naval arms race, with dreadnought battleships and submarines under construction on both sides. The diesel engine promised a new era of efficiency at sea. It could extend the range of ships, reduce their reliance on bulky coal supplies, and most dangerously, give Britain's Royal Navy a strategic advantage. Rudolf Diesel's scheduled visit to England wasn't just business. It was a potential act of treason in the eyes of German nationalists. At the head of the Imperial German Navy stood Grand Admiral Alfred von Tirpitz, a man obsessed with securing naval supremacy for the Kaiser. Tirpitz had poured vast sums into Germany's coal-fired battleship fleet. The idea that Diesel, a German inventor, could hand a technological edge to their greatest rival may have been intolerable. In those paranoid days before the Great War, such an act could have been seen as unforgivable betrayal. And then there was the matter of the timing. On September 29, 1913, Diesel boarded the SS Dresden with plans to attend meetings that could shift the balance of military power in Europe. By the morning of September 30th, he was gone. No witness ever saw him fall. His bed was untouched. His belongings were left behind, and when a decomposed body washed ashore days later, it was too unrecognizable to be confirmed as him. Only the personal effects tied the corpse to his name. To those who believe Diesel was murdered, the signs are glaring. His private safe, where he kept critical documents, vanished after his death. Papers detailing future contracts and financial arrangements disappeared. There was no inquest, no investigation worth the name. The case was quietly closed, ruled a suicide, and conveniently forgotten. It's been argued that someone on that ship made sure Diesel never reached England, that agents, whether from the German state, rival industries, or financial interests, orchestrated his disappearance in the most effective way possible, silenced him forever in the cold waters of the North Sea. Some whispered that Germany had lured Diesel to that ship under the guise of business, knowing full well he would never make landfall. Others suspected the reach of foreign oil interests. Either way, Diesel's death benefited too many powerful men to be dismissed as mere coincidence. Theory 4. Escape or staged disappearance. What if the famed inventor hadn't fallen victim to the sea, but had chosen to vanish? It's a question that refuses to die, whispered through history like the echo of a man who walked away from everything. There are those who believe Diesel didn't die at all, that he faked his own disappearance, slipping away into the night, leaving behind the crushing weight of debt, lawsuits, and the suffocating pressures of industrial warfare. In this version of the story, Diesel wasn't a victim. He was an escape artist. The clues are as strange as they are unsettling. When the steward entered Diesel's cabin the morning after his disappearance, the scene was almost too perfect. His bed lay untouched. His nightclothes were neatly folded, his personal belongings organized with the same meticulous care he brought to his inventions. On the deck, his hat and overcoat rested quietly near the rails, silent witnesses to his final steps aboard the Dresden. But there was no body, no struggle, no witness, just absence. 10 days later, a decayed corpse was found floating in the North Sea, unrecognizable, bloated from the salt water. The fishermen who discovered it didn't bother to haul the body aboard, only retrieving a handful of personal effects: a knife, a pill case, a wallet, They threw the body back into the sea as if it never mattered. The world would be told it was Diesel, but in truth, no one ever saw the body again, and this is where the whispers began. What if those items were planted? What if Diesel left them behind intentionally, knowing they would be found, knowing the world would assume the worst? Back in Germany, Diesel's finances were in ruins. Lawsuits bled him dry, royalties were shrinking, and creditors circled like vultures. For a man who had changed the world, Diesel's own world was crumbling. He was nearly bankrupt, facing public humiliation and financial ruin. Was it really so far-fetched to believe he'd plotted his escape? The rumors spread quickly in the months after his disappearance. Murmurs of sightings in North America, an older man with a heavy accent tinkering with engines in a remote workshop. Whispers from the Middle East, from French ports, from industrial towns where no one would recognize the face of a European inventor. Stories of a man who had traded celebrity for anonymity. People spoke of his quiet rebellion, not just against creditors, but against a world spiraling toward war. In the months before his disappearance, Diesel had been moving closer to the British Navy, securing contracts for his engines. He had made enemies in Germany, among the powerful coal syndicates and political forces wary of his loyalties. Maybe Diesel had seen the storm coming and decided to step off the board before the game began. There are even those who claim Diesel planned his vanishing like an engineer would, precisely, methodically, that he had arranged for a small fishing vessel to meet him offshore, to slip away in the darkness while the rest of the Dresden slept. A rendezvous with freedom. But stories like these, while thrilling, always come with shadows. If Diesel had escaped, why leave his wife behind without a word? Why abandon his family to the wolves of debt and scandal? He had always been a devoted husband, a caring father. Would a man like that vanish without even a goodbye? And why, if he had run away, did no one ever come forward with proof? No photograph, no letter, no credible witness. Just scattered rumors that drifted as aimlessly as the body in the sea. In the years after Rudolf Diesel vanished into the North Sea, his name lived on, not as a man, but as a force of industry. The diesel engine, the brainchild of his relentless experimentation and ambition, swept across the globe like wildfire. Warships that once fed on mountains of coal now roared to life with the efficiency of diesel. Massive freight ships crossed oceans, their engines pulsing with the power of Diesel's invention. Railways that once choked on smoke found a new rhythm, and entire industries pivoted to the revolutionary technology he had brought into the world. Diesel's vision of an engine that could run on vegetable oil and alternative fuels quietly laid the foundation for future generations to explore biofuels, a dream of energy independence that was far ahead of its time. And yet, while his engines thrived, the man himself became a ghost, a footnote in history. His disappearance was never fully explained, his death never officially solved. There was no formal inquest to unravel the mystery, no criminal investigation to pursue foul play. There was simply silence. For his family, the aftermath was brutal. His wife, Martha, was left not only widowed, but destitute. Whatever wealth the world assumed Diesel had accumulated was, in reality, swallowed by debt. Creditors descended like vultures, and the patents that should have secured their future were tangled in lawsuits and financial disputes. Martha and their children found themselves stripped of security, their lives reduced to hardship. The world, eager to capitalize on Diesel's invention, seemed indifferent to the suffering of the very family who bore his name. As decades passed, the questions surrounding Diesel's fate refused to fade. Scholars debated fiercely. Was Rudolf Diesel a man who had been broken by the very empire he built, his genius crushed under the weight of financial ruin and impossible expectations? Or had he been the target of powerful enemies, corporate rivals, national governments, industrial giants, who saw his connections with the British Navy as a threat in the escalating march toward war? Over a century later, the mystery remains unresolved. Rudolf Diesel's engines reshaped the world, but his own fate is trapped in a cloud of speculation and unanswered questions. The world may never know, and maybe that's exactly how Diesel wanted it. What do you think happened to Rudolf Diesel? Suicide, accident, murder, or a grand escape? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into historical vanishings, make sure to subscribe to Missing Persons Archives. We uncover the world's most fascinating true disappearances, one story at a time. Until next time, stay curious, stay vigilant, and remember, history hides more secrets than we realize.